Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I am your host, Smooth Caramel, and I'll talk about rap, so that's what I'm gonna do. So today I'm gonna be looking at a J. Cole song, which I actually thought was new. Turns out it's a solid decade old, so my mistake. But I mean, it is what it is. I want to talk about it. I start to make plans, so it might not be new, but I'm gonna talk about it. J. Cole isn't actually an artist that I've talked about very much, and I don't just mean on this channel. I just mean in general when I'm talking about music, whether it be with friends or family or people that I'm working with creatively. It's just not the type of music, or I guess not even the type of music. It's just not been a topic of discussion that I've found myself having very often. So when it came to actually looking at this song, it was probably the first time I've had a truly focused listening experience when it comes to a J. Cole song. And I should say that this isn't because I have any, let's say, negative feelings that have made me avoid listening to J. Cole. It's somewhat the opposite, in fact, that I just don't necessarily have the strongest of feelings either way when it comes to J. Cole's music. Though I did actually consider him to be one of the better rappers, or one of the good ones, back in the early 2010s when he really started to blow up. Or at least when I was first made aware of his emergence into the musical scene, or the mainstream. Please don't at me telling me it was in whatever year, in 2000 or whatever, because I'm just talking about as far as I knew it and my experience with J. Cole as an artist, just for some broader context for whatever I might say going forward. Either way, not the strongest of feelings in any direction when it comes to J. Cole or his music, but let's say I would view him respectfully as an artist from a bit of a distance, a comfortable distance. The first song I'd actually heard of J. Cole was Workout, which I believe my younger cousin played at a low-key family gathering around the time that it first came out. Up until this point, I would have been doing my thing with selections musically. You know, I love to DJ these kind of situations, so I had to relinquish control of the music for a second to let my cousin play this song, and I mean, it did hurt me there for a second to do so, I can't lie. But I've learned to cope with such pain slowly, over time. However, surprisingly, I actually found the song to be pretty enjoyable. I know this because I recall it relatively comfortably, and if it were a case of me vacating my role for some garbage crap rap, then I would probably recall this event with some grey tinted resentment. But no, it was actually a relatively welcome selection. The song gave me vibes of that early 2000s pop rap or hip hop that was more in the mainstream, so it had a very familiar sound and feel to it. The subject matter as well didn't put me off. It wasn't either, let's say, some toxic pseudo-masculine bullshit, but it also wasn't, let's say, some overly sanitized and romanticized fantasy. And you know what? I did appreciate that. It was something to nod along to fairly happily, but I wasn't out here having eargasm trying to figure out who this guy was and how he came up and crafted his music. But over time, I would stumble across a J. Cole song every now and then that I would quite like. No role models being the most enduring favorite of mine when it comes to his selections. Although when I say that, I'm not actually including features, because I think that's a bit of another thing, especially because the features of him that I enjoy are usually more R&B-esque ones, whereas more the overall songs from the artist at the forefront that I actually appreciate there. Some examples I can think of being Miguel, with whom he's made two songs that I really enjoy. But if we're considering a different artist, then I would say that Shea Butter by Ari Lennox is also a great song where he features to a point that is enjoyable, but again, not a game changer. The tangent is real here. To summarize, for me, I'd say that J. Cole essentially ended up something like the takeaway that you turn to when you know you want to take away, but you're not exactly sure what you're craving, and you have to make a decision before everything closes. At that point, when you finally do receive your takeaway, you're pleasantly surprised or satisfied with what you're receiving. But just not to the point where you're going to scour that establishment's menu because you've been reignited in your appreciation of what they have to offer. I know I'm getting kind of bad at these food-related analogies and metaphors, but you know what? So is J. Cole. And with that, I will move clumsily along to the review. So my first impressions were similar to when I first heard Workout, in that it was comfortably familiar with those kind of early 2000 pop rap vibes that made it very easy to nod along to. And I think now at this point I was actually able to appreciate it that little bit more because it's been a solid decade since the song actually came out. So that feeling has some nostalgia adding to my enjoyment, particularly in the way that guitar sounded loose. Though I would say I wasn't the most into those sing rappy parts that J. Cole does here and there. And I know this is becoming something of a recurring topic on this channel, but it was there. At first I was scared he was gonna go full Young Blue on us with that auto-tune sing rappy vibe, but you know what, it did remain more on that hip-hop style of music for the majority of the song. His flow was largely what I'd expect from J. Cole. Solid, serviceable, just not anything especially interesting or innovative. And with the subject matter somewhat meandering to the more common mainstream tropes like money and women, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not really that surprised that I kind of managed to miss this song when it first came out. The combination of these very prevalent tropes and mainstream features, it's enough for me to somewhat shut off when I hear them, especially when combined in such a way, and I kind of just allow it to wash over me and like convert to a more passive listening mode. But on this occasion I was listening for the purpose of a review, so I did remain focused and attentive when I was going through it. And because of that, there was a lot more that I noticed, some of which I will actually talk about today. The first being the aforementioned food lines.
Your son out in Barbados, cheese, eggs, and potatoes.
Now, the majority of my background is Caribbean, Jamaican to be specific. So I find this first line of discussion to be particularly funny to consider when you're talking about somewhere in the Caribbean. It's common for artists to talk about all these exotic and interesting locations they go to as a form of showboating about how international they are. A certain dog thing artist comes to mind.
No say I'm mad. Mr. Worldwide.
But you got Cole here, you know, doing his thing with his laid-back, blasé, showboaty flow, and the delivery especially, giving off that air of superiority. But then he follows this location check with pretty much one of the most common household type foods you can find near anywhere on the planet. Just, I mean, if you're in the Caribbean, and that's what you name check to show how lavishly that you're living. I don't know what he's doing. There's a lot I can really say. It could have been an island for all we know, for that to be the cuisine at the forefront. But obviously it's not the fact that the food is bad, it's more that it's just very common. And when you're name checking exotic locations to highlight how lavishly you're living, then it kind of works against that vibe and tone. But who knows, maybe the food mentioned was actually a complete non sequitur to the location, and it's actually nothing to do with Barbados, and in fact just a very easy rhyme to follow onto it that rolled across the tongue quite easily. To be honest, I think I'm more inclined to believe that. But we're moving on.
Smoking weed on the beach is my mind working like Play-Dohs, analyzing the world, fantasizing.
I can't decide whether I think these lines are well written or dumb, but I think I kind of like the somewhat compromising self-depiction, associating his deeper, more philosophical thinking, analyzing the world and all of its flawed complexity, with fantasizing about girls. Especially with the overall tone of indulgence. I mean, you have the laid-back weed smoking to convey a sense of having no concerns or worries, and the song is called Nobody's Perfect, so it could just fall in line with that overall sense and theme behind the song.
Hey, cold heating up like that leftover lasagna.
Now this is the signature J. Cole move that I always find particularly confusing and entertaining. Leading up to a punchline with the most energy and intensity, both in his actual delivery and for where it lands with the structure of the beat, to make a punchline based upon some of the most mundane shit possible. Reheating some leftover lasagna. It had to be reheated leftovers as well. I don't know why that was what he chose. At least if it was like freshly cooked, then you have that edge in the fiction of it being fresh. And it has more anticipation too. But leftovers. Now, I'm assuming this line was meant to convey a sense of power and significance. But my mind doesn't really know how to do that when you're talking about leftover lasagna. Something you've already enjoyed, probably for the most already. It's had its time to shine, but it will serve as a very reasonable place filler when you don't have the energy or the will to make something new. I'm not sure if that's the line you want to drop when you preceded it with other lines about how he intends to essentially reignite his career. Leftover. That line almost made me want to make this a bad lyrics video, but the overall theme and the other lines surrounding it I thought were fine, so a review this remains.
Nobody's perfect, nobody's perfect, hey, but you're perfect for me. Nobody's perfect, nobody's perfect, hey.
The chorus is fine for what it is. Missy Elliot has a great voice, and it's always nice to listen to even in its limited capacity. You could almost say that having Missy Elliott's voice next to J. Cole in his singing or sing-rapping parts almost hurts his presentation in comparison. The combination of the two somewhat making the song come across as a bit more unrefined. But I think that the overall idea of the song being that nobody's perfect makes it a lot more forgivable or acceptable. It carries a vibe almost to say, don't take things too seriously, we're not going to take making this song too seriously either. Instead, just putting it together in a way that feels most comfortable, natural, and enjoyable to those who are taking part in its production. And you know what? That's alright. Even if the chorus is talking about more relationship themed things and the verses are meandering around other things, either related, unrelated, or somewhat related, making it seem a little bit unfocused, but it's cool. We're all just part of that laid-back experience, and I can roll with that. There have been times and places where I've been told I'm so laid-back, I'm horizontal. Not the cleverest thing you could say, but hey. Plus, I love to listen to Missy Elliot in songs in whatever capacity, so there is something to be enjoyed in just that. With that said though, I'm gonna leave it there. I could look into more lyrically. I did analyze a bit more when I was making notes, but there just wasn't too much that was really substantively different to anything else I've said or of note to the point of making me want to go further into it. So yeah, it is what it is. Kind of just all falls within the realm of what you'd expect from mainstream rap of the mid to late 2000s. So my takeaway theme description of my relationship when it comes to the music of J. Cole remains the same. I will check out new music from the man if I come across it though. I'm always very ready for new hip hop to love. But anyways, peace, love, all the rest. This has been another Smooth Caramel review.